Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Rebecca Roberts.
And I'm Yochanan El Rom.
In our top story, the Israeli Security Cabinet has voted to increase military pressure to secure the release of the remaining 59 hostages held by Hamas in Gaza. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu confirmed that IDF pressure is crushing Hamas's military and governmental capabilities and creating the conditions for the release of the hostages. He said Hamas is negotiating from a weakened position under fire and that the pressure has exposed cracks in the jihadi group's control over Gaza. Netanyahu said that Hamas leaders must now lay down their weapons and leave the war-torn enclave.
Citizens living in the Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip are finally calling for the terror group to release the hostages and surrender. Massive protests have erupted in the streets of the terrorist stronghold, demanding that Hamas evacuate the war-ravaged enclave. Hamas terrorists ambushed the protesters and arrested dozens of activists. We can confirm that at least one demonstrator has been killed by Hamas. 22-year-old Uday Nasser al-Rabi was laid to rest in Gaza City after being abducted, tortured, and murdered by the Iranian-backed terror group. His lifeless body was dragged through the streets of Gaza as a warning to the other protesters.
The rogue Islamic Republic of Iran is facing an unprecedented water shortage, and experts believe that this may spark a coup to finally overthrow the Ayatollah. In 2018, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reached out to the citizens of Iran, offering them Israeli water technology. He called for the establishment of a Farsi language website with detailed instructions on how to recycle wastewater. Unfortunately, the drought in Iran has only gotten worse. Citizens are reporting that water lines are closed at random and that mud drips from their taps. Water tankers have been dispatched to neighborhoods where people stand in line for hours for just a few cups of drinking water. This crisis has led to failed crops, food shortage, and increased dependency on imported foods. This, coupled with gross mismanagement, hyperinflation, and crushing economic sanctions, has made food virtually unaffordable in the Islamic Republic. Experts believe that the drought is not just an environmental issue. It is a potential catalyst for civil unrest and disorder that could lead to national instability and ultimately the fall of the radical Islamic regime.
Brad Sherman, Democratic congressman and co-chair of the Congressional Israel Allies Caucus, has called for an end to tax-exempt status for any organization with ties to terror. Sherman recently met with former Hamas hostage Andrei Kozlov, who recounted his time in captivity. The California lawmaker was shocked to learn that the terrorist who held Kozlov was an employee of the Palestine Chronicle, an organization that enjoys tax-exempt certification in the United States. Sherman called to revoke the group's status, saying it is vital that we make sure that no organization with terror ties maintains its tax-exempt benefits in America.
The Egyptian military continues to violate the peace agreement with Israel by deploying its troops and tanks in the Sinai Desert. In February, Yechiel Leiter, Israel's ambassador to the United States, sounded the alarm over Egyptian troop movement on Israel's southern border. He also expressed concern about the construction of military bases that can only be used for offensive purposes. Recent satellite imagery reveals that Egypt has extended runways at its bases and has deployed tanks and troops beyond the quota permitted in the Israel-Egypt peace treaty. Tensions were further inflamed last week when newly appointed Israeli ambassador to Egypt, Ori Rotman, was disinvited to his own accreditation ceremony in Cairo. This event was timed to mark the 46th anniversary of the Egypt-Israel peace treaty, which Cairo is now flagrantly violating.
Israel has launched an exciting pilot program which will enable Gazans to live and work in Indonesia. The Voluntary Migration Initiative will assist over 100 Gazans to work in the Indonesian construction sector. The project will demonstrate the feasibility of voluntary immigration and hopefully encourage Gazans to accept jobs abroad. If successful, Israel's Migration Directorate will work to secure employment opportunities in other nations. Defense Minister Israel Katz praised the move, saying Israel is working to implement U.S. President Donald Trump's vision, and we will allow any Gaza resident who wants to move to a third state to do so.
Jerusalem sent a delegation of search and rescue workers to Thailand after a devastating earthquake rocked the nation last week. Just hours after the disaster struck, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu dispatched a group of 21 experts. They were led by the commander of the IDF's Reserve Search and Rescue Unit, Colonel Yossi Pinto. Israel Aid also announced that it sent emergency response teams to the region to conduct rapid needs assessments and plan its relief efforts. These teams include experts in water, sanitation, hygiene, and emergency response.
Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan publicly called for the destruction of Israel during celebrations at the end of the Muslim month of Ramadan. He urged Allah to destroy and devastate Zionist Israel and to keep Muslim brothers united and resilient. Ankara is a major source of funding for Palestinian terrorism in Israel, and Hamas leaders have directed dozens of terror attacks on the Jewish state from its headquarters in Istanbul. Erdogan called Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu a Nazi and a vampire who feeds on blood. He has even threatened to invade the Jewish state. Israel's Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar warned that Erdogan is dangerous to the region as well as to his own people.
Council leaders of communities throughout Judea and Samaria are calling for Israeli sovereignty and a permanent Jewish presence at Joseph's tomb in Shechem. This ancient city has been the inheritance of the Jewish people since time immemorial. The Bible details Joseph's purchase of the plot, where he built an altar to God. This land ultimately became his final resting place. Joseph's tomb resides in the modern Arab city of Nablus under the control of the Palestinian Authority. It has been repeatedly burned and desecrated, and Jews who attempt to pray there have been viciously attacked. Now Israeli leaders are calling to correct this historical injustice. They said Joseph's tomb is a symbol of the Jewish people's deep connection to the land of Israel, and in particular, to Shechem. They said there is a moral imperative to return to our holy places and ensure the basic right to pray there.
Israeli biotech firm Sirt Lab has announced a major breakthrough in the search for the fountain of youth. The company is nearing human trials for its drug that can extend lifespan by up to 30%. Sirt Lab's research has focused on stimulating the SIRT6 age-regulating protein that affects brain function, organ health, immunity, and vitality. Researchers believe this treatment could be available in 3 years if clinical trials are successful.
We're happy to report that U.S. air carrier Delta Airlines has resumed its direct daily flights to the Jewish state. This comes just weeks after its largest competitor, United Airlines, resumed service between Newark and Tel Aviv. Shortly after the Hamas attacks on October 7, 2023, all 3 major American airlines unilaterally halted service to Israel. This left Israel's flagship carrier, El Al, the sole airline to fly directly between Israel and the United States. Ticket prices skyrocketed, and many people were forced to take multiple flights with connections through Europe to reach the Holy Land. The resumption of service by 2 of the major American air carriers has reopened the skies over Israel, and we invite all of our viewers to come to the land of the Bible. As we say in Hebrew, Hashanah Hazeh B'Yerushalayim, this year in Jerusalem.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has announced that all tariffs collected on U.S. products have been canceled. In a joint statement, Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, Industry and Economy Minister Nir Barkat, and Prime Minister Netanyahu announced the move, which is meant to strengthen the alliance between the United States and Israel. In 1985, Jerusalem and Washington entered a free trade agreement declaring 99% of goods imported from America would be tax-free. The United States is Israel's largest trading partner, and bilateral trade between the allies is worth more than $34 billion. Smotrich hailed the Trump administration for presenting a real opportunity to shape a new strategic economic future for both countries while strengthening Israel's role as an economic partner. That concludes the news portion of our show. Stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. We're here in our beautiful studio in Jerusalem. My guest today is Yishai Gelb. He's a VP Marketing for My Tree in Israel. Yishai, thank you for being on the show.
A pleasure.
Tell our viewers a little about what is My Tree in Israel.
Definitely. So My Tree in Israel is a company that was founded about 6 years ago by Kobe, Ophir, and myself. And My Tree has two primary goals. The first is to support and promote the Israeli farmers in the land of Israel who are vital to Israel's national security. The second is to create a new, unique, and personal connection between Israel supporters to the land of Israel. And so our program is a combination of both of these missions by allowing people to invest directly in the Israeli farmer by adopting an olive tree in their olive grove. Now, I say adopt an olive tree because they're not purchasing the tree and they're not planting the tree, but they are adopting the tree throughout the year. Throughout the year, the farmer cultivates the tree, prunes, waters, does whatever a farmer does during the year. And at the end of the season, which is typically November, the farmer harvests the trees and produces award-winning Israeli olive oil. And then we, My Tree in Israel, we bottle the olive oil into 6 individual bottles of olive oil. And the cherry on top is that each bottle is labeled with the private label of the person who adopted the tree. And we ship it anywhere in the world to any address that our adopter chooses. So the idea here, that people can support Israel, not in the form of a donation, but rather by investing directly into the Israeli farmer, all while receiving or preserving the meaningful support for Israel, is a game changer. And those are my words. Those are the words of Governor Mike Huckabee, now Ambassador Huckabee, who has been a great supporter of our program for the past 3 years. Quite frankly, his entire family.
Yishai, you mentioned that it's a national security issue. What do you mean by that?
In national security, food security is vital in order to ensure that the state, in this case the state of Israel, can feed its citizens through times of war and not through times of war. And Israel is definitely in a region where there's a lot of conflict, and it's very important that Israel can grow its own products and not to import everything. And therefore, the farmers who, on the one hand, they were our pioneers, the people who laid the bedrock for the foundation of the State of Israel, today play a pivotal role in ensuring our food security. And therefore, it's our mission to support these farmers and to do so while inviting others from around the world to participate in this mission.
You know, we saw since October 7th that farming has taken a big hit. We don't have enough workers. A lot of the land was damaged. Well, what can be done through this program to help farmers to rebuild their farms?
It's actually interesting because the farmers who worked the land were also called up in the beginning of the war as reservists, and it was right before the harvest. And it was very, very difficult, but the farmers left the service for 3 hours, 4 hours here and there in the middle of the night just to make sure that the trees were being harvested properly. So very, very difficult time for the farmers in general. The way people can contribute is through My Tree in Israel by adopting the olive tree, because when you adopt the olive tree, you're directly supporting the Israeli farmer in 2 ways. First of all, we pay the farmers above market value to ensure that they have a good livelihood from what they sell. Secondly, the adoption of a tree process, people can do so on subscription, which means that they're essentially year upon year the farmers are pre-selling the olive oil from those trees. So the farmer knows at the beginning of the season that each tree already has a face, already has an address to where that olive oil is going to be shipped to. And that's very impactful for the farmers in the land of Israel.
A lot of people don't know that in the north and the south, a lot of our trees and our produce was damaged during the rocket fires and the fires and things like that. What can My Tree in Israel do to help replenish some of those groves?
We recently started helping out farmers in the north where their vineyards were completely damaged by the rocket fire. And we also work with another farmer who grows barley in the north who has been hurt by rocket fire. But just joining the program, adopting the olive tree or the other crops that we offer the other farmers that are in our program, it's very important, is a wonderful way to help the farmers, because even if the crops were hit or damaged, they can get crops from elsewhere. But if they know that they can sell the products, the finished product from the crops they're getting elsewhere, then that is really important to them, to the farmers.
One of the things that I thought was really interesting about the program is that not only do you adopt a tree, but you can actually come and visit your tree. You know where your tree is and you can visit it. Why did you add that into the whole initiative?
Since one of our missions was to create a relationship between the Israeli supporters and the people of Israel, it was essential that people can interact with the farmers, meet the farmers, and get to hear their stories. And I would say hundreds of our adopters already came to Israel and visited their tree, visited their farmer. And for many of them, it's a very emotional experience, because for them to come to Israel and to see an olive tree with a plaque that has their name or the name of their loved one, and it's a tree that has tangible roots in the land, for them it's a very deep connection, and sometimes they even tear up. And Kobe and I, when we're in the field with them, we tear up with them because it's just such an emotional experience. And people, when they come, they can also visit the press house, see the most advanced press house in the region, which is very phenomenal. And it's just something that, for our adopters, it's very special.
Yishai, there are literally tens of millions of people watching this show. What message do you have for our viewing audience?
Yes. For the first time, your tree in Israel can yield you something in return. Your personalized product with your private name, which you can give for yourself and for your family, or as a wonderful gift for somebody special, or as a way to commemorate a loved one in the land of Israel. There's so many benefits to this program that you, as an Israeli supporter, can participate in the cultivation and the agricultural industry in Israel. Your support is vital not only during these times, but in general. And so we invite you to visit our website, hear our farmer stories, and adopt your olive tree today.
Thank you, Yishai, for being on the show. And thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
And now the truth from Zion.
The job of a United Nations refugee agency is to assist refugees from around the world so that they can have better lives and a true shot at success. But when it comes to Palestinian refugees, the players and the rules are different. UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, is the only UN organization that deals specifically with the Palestinian people, and they've been failing at bringing them out of refugee status for nearly 75 years. The United Nations defines a refugee as any person who is outside their country of origin for reasons of feared persecution, conflict, generalized violence, or other circumstances that have seriously disturbed public order, and as a result, they require international protection. The standard definition of a refugee usually applies to just one generation, but the Palestinians have a rare status. They are refugees for life, and their status as a refugee continues on for generation after generation. A Palestinian person can move out of the region and resettle, gain wealth and education, and still be considered a refugee. Even those Palestinians that have always lived in Gaza are considered refugees by UNRWA.
UNRWA is a dangerous organization that's whole purpose is to perpetuate the refugees crisis.
700,000 Arabs who lived within the British Mandate of Palestine were displaced following Israel's War of Independence in 1948. A year later, UNRWA was founded with the task of helping those refugees. 150,000 Arabs were given citizenship and welcomed under Israeli sovereignty. But most of the Palestinians rejected the premise of a Jewish state, and others were moved out of the territories that had been allocated for Israel. Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria signed off on the border agreement. UNRWA has spent the last 3/4 of a century turning the initial refugee population into a demographic 8 times its original size. Today, the UN estimates there are more than 5.9 million Palestinians with refugee status who live off what was supposed to be temporary humanitarian support. UNRWA operates in Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon, but none of these nations offer Palestinian refugees citizenship, choosing instead to keep the population living in camps. UNRWA operates with a staff of nearly 30,000 and a budget of about $1.2 billion. Only a few of UNRWA's staff come from other countries. The rest of its employees are hired directly from communities within the Palestinian territories. This financially bloated, inept agency has failed to resettle even one refugee. All of the refugees are handled by the UNHCR, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. The role of the UNHCR is to rehabilitate and resettle them. UNRWA operates unlike other refugee relief organizations, and it's not clear exactly why. Most of UNRWA's work revolves around what they call education. Textbooks are filled with material that influences students to kill Jews through a violent overthrow. Other messaging directly expresses the false idea that one day Palestinians will remove all the Jews in the region. Maps in classrooms do not show the State of Israel in an effort to pretend that it does not exist. This type of rhetoric teaches young people to operate with hate instead of looking toward a future of coexistence. Many Hamas terrorists today were graduates of UNRWA schools. UNRWA has been condemned following accusations of serious ethical failures. Published reports highlight sexual misconduct, nepotism, rampant discrimination, and routine instruction of anti-Semitism taught to children. Infuriated by these scandals, the Swiss government and the United States stopped funding the organization in 2018 and 2019. However, when U.S. President Joe Biden took office, he reinstated and raised America's financial support for UNRWA.
UNRWA schools are used to store and launch rockets. UNRWA teachers praised the attacks on October 7th, and one even held an Israeli hostage captive.
UNRWA has no shortage of documented instances where staff members and educators praised Adolf Hitler, the killing of Jews, and the Hamas massacre of October 7th. During the IDF's retaliatory ground operation into Gaza, following the October 7th attack on Israel, they discovered numerous Hamas terror tunnels built beneath UNRWA schools. The schools were used to store weapons and ammunition. UNRWA is actively hindering the development and progress of the Palestinians and destroying the vision for peace. This is all part of a larger effort to ensure that conflict continues and that Israelis are driven out of their homeland as hinted to in UNRWA's charter. Up next, the ICEJ report from the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem.
ICEJ is passionate about offering practical help and life-changing opportunities to those in need in every sector of Israeli society. Since Israel's war with Hamas began, Israeli citizens have been negatively impacted economically, with many business owners losing more than 50% of their monthly income. This makes it difficult to keep their business afloat and to provide for their families. Government compensation offers insufficient relief for small businesses, many that are operated by women. The situation is even more complicated for those evacuated from their homes, far away from their customer base. To help alleviate these challenges, the ICEJ is sponsoring business mentorship and giving grants to help small businesses succeed, even in these challenging times.
Since 1980, the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem has been a voice of Christian support for Israel and connected the global church to the land of the Bible. Headquartered in Jerusalem, the ICEJ has taken action to stand with Israel by caring for Holocaust survivors, helping Jewish families return home to Israel, providing bomb shelters, fighting anti-Semitism around the world, and by inviting Christians to discover Israel for themselves.
אני ירין לב, בת 24. אני הקמתי את העסק שלי לפני 7 חודשים עם הערוץ שלי, נתנאל כהן, הוא בן 27, אני בת 24. הקמנו את זה מאהבה מאוד גדולה לתחום. הבן זוג שלי 11 שנים בתחום הפיצות, הפסטות, הסלטים, קינוחים ועוד. הקמנו את זה, כמו שאמרתי, לפני 7 חודשים. פתחנו את זה במקום חדש, כאן אצלנו בעיר באופקים. אנחנו ממש מרגישים מיום ליום שהדבר הזה היה מאוד חסר בעיר שלנו. בעיקרון המלחמה הגיעה בדיוק עם פתיחת העסק. אז כן היה אתגר, זה היה מאוד קשוח. אז ניסינו כמה שיותר לפרסם ברשתות החברתיות עם כמה שאפשר, אבל בסופו של דבר אנחנו מנסים כל יום להתעלות על הדבר הזה שקרה לנו. אני אספר שנייה רגע סיפור אישי שקרה לי במלחמה. ממש 5 ימים לפני המלחמה, זאת אומרת ב2 לאוקטובר, אני עברתי לבית הזה, והבית הקודם שלי זה זה שנכנסו אליו. ב2 לאוקטובר אני עזבתי אותו, וממש נכנסו אליו, ולא משנה, האנשים שהיו שם לא בחיים ולא איתנו, וניצלתי, וזה פשוט לקרוע גומל, כאילו הבדל של 5 ימים שעברתי לכאן, ופה באופקים חווינו על הבשר שלנו משהו שלא חווינו אף פעם, זה היה פשוט מטורף. 50 אנשים שקרובים אלינו נרצחו, זה בשכונה כאילו שנחשבת מאוד 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 מיוחדת. וואו, מנסים להקל את מה שקרה. בעיקרון, כל פעם שפנו אלינו זה היה מין שמחה כזו, שזה עוזר לנו גם, וגם עוזר לחיילים שלנו, למי ששומר עלינו. זה באמת באמת עזר לנו. התקוות בעזרת השם זה לפתוח עוד סניפים, להתפתח יותר בתחום, אולי להפוך גם למסעדה, כרגע זה טייק-אווי יותר, וזהו. קודם כל זה ממש מרגש ומחמם את הלב, שעוזרים ותומכים ויודעים ומכירים, ובאמת זה ממש מרגש אותנו. רק תודה רבה לכם ושתמשיכו כך, זה מרגש מאוד.
After Hamas brutally attacked Israel on October the 7th, 2023, the ICEJ has been actively standing with Israel and her people through advocacy and urgently needed aid projects. Now is the time for Christians to turn their love for Israel and the Jewish people into real action as never before. Your donation will help deliver bomb shelters to at-risk areas, provide necessary supplies for first responders, support affected citizens with trauma care, and will eventually help rebuild these devastated communities. Visit ICEJUSA.tv to donate online or call 1-800-910-6355 and give your generous gift today.
That's all for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Rebecca Roberts.
And I'm Yochanan Elron, reporting from our studio in Jerusalem. Join us again next week for all of your Israel updates.